Hello and welcome to another episode of the Growth Advisory. I am your host, Jim Crimella, and with me today is an esteemed guest. Super excited to have him on. I could give all of his accolades, but I would probably be here for like 3 hours going through all of the fun stuff he did, so I will let him speak to that. Welcome, Mark Parrott, to the Growth Advisory, and welcome, sir. How are you doing today?
Dude, you even pronounced my name right. That's impressive.
I did my research.
Dude, that's like the soundtrack of my life is having my name mispronounced.
When I saw the name, I was like, I'm gonna mess this up, so I got to do this right. I want to make sure that I respect you and respect your heritage on that. So pleasure to have you, and wanted to dive in. So typically the Growth Advisory is a podcast. It's all about businesses, how they grow, what challenges they face, what solutions they've overcome, and things of that. And when I met you on LinkedIn, I was so impressed with your book, The Woking Dead, and Metatrends. Had a chance to look at some of your stuff, so I really just wanted to share your story with my audience. I think it would resonate quite well. So with that, why don't you go ahead and take it over and sort of introduce what you do and who you all are and what you're all about.
Well, okay. So what do I do? Where do I start? About 17 years ago, I figured out that I had a fiduciary wealth management practice, and I figured out that when the market goes dark, like 2008, when the market goes dark, so do retail financial planning clients. So I sat back and I said, okay, maybe there's a counter-cyclical revenue stream I could attract, where instead of just kind of going the way of the market every time, is there something that kind of wakes up when the market goes black? And the answer is CEOs. So I started studying CEOs. In fact, I had a radio show at the time called Money Talks, and we also had a very tough regulatory environment at the time. They started asking me to script like a live show, and then I had to like put in prospectus type stuff. I'm like, who the hell going to listen to a radio show with it's a prospectus?
There goes the entertainment value.
Attorneys don't even want to read those things. Right. So I said, maybe what I could do is pivot. So I did, and we started interviewing CEOs. And then I noticed something interesting. As soon as the on-air light would turn off, the guy would start crying on my shoulder about how much it stunk to be a CEO. And I'm like, the complaints all fell into the same categories too. So I said, I have two of those. And every one of my friends who are CEOs were all like me, had two of these complaints or what have you. So I said, what if we formed like an accountability circle? Like we met once a quarter, once a month, something like that, where we outlined what our challenges were, and then we challenged each other to overcome those challenges. And so I invented, in effect, peer advisory when it already existed. So
Gotcha.
I would talk about it on the air with these guys, like what are the challenges and stuff like that. Someone from the peer advisory world came calling, because they said, look, you're reinventing the wheel. We've been doing this since 1957. That organization is now called Vistage. So I've done about 1,000 presentations for them. I was a chair, a member, speaker, and very few people have been all three. We're down to 2 of us have been all three out of 25,000 members in the U.S. and 45,000 members worldwide. So so what it does is it put me in a position where I could kind of understand this very unique world. I wanted to find out what was normal in this abnormal space, because I don't know about you, Jim. I've known my entire lifetime I am not normal.
No, my wife reminds me of how unnormal I am all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So what I did was I started to study Vistage members. So I have the largest survey of privately held CEOs and C-level executives probably in the world. So I beat Ohio State at their own game. I beat Vistage at their own game. I beat Core Value at their own game. So what I have now is I actually have a study that's 10 years old. So for the last 10 years, how valuable it is to be a Vistage member in dollar figures, how much they outperform their non-Vistage competitors. But then what it did was it was like peeling an onion, that there's all sorts of things going on behind the scenes that they drop their battle armor with me, because what I'm able to do is to value their companies accurately today. Also, I'm able to value what's wrong. And the average valuation of what's wrong for a private middle market CEO is worth $13.5 million.
It's not a small chunk of change there.
No. So picture my average audience is worth 20 million. They're typically partners. The average valuation of the company is 40 million. It's just shy of 40 million. I'm sparing your listeners time. And the average wrong is 13.5 million. The number one thing wrong is sales and marketing. The number two thing wrong is recurring revenue. So what I do is I coach the CEOs out of being on defense, get them to not do things that they absolutely hate to do. Like if let's say you were a coaching client, what I would do is I'd sit down with you, we do a diagnostic on your business to figure out what's right, what's wrong. Then we make what's right a little righter. And then what we do is accumulate time and therefore a budget so we can bring in outside counsel. So I have an army of advisors that help fix companies. Because frankly, the real truth of it is, your business owners that are listening to this, running a private middle market company is like flying a plane while you're building it.
Right.
How do you know you're building it the right way?
Yep.
So what we did was I went and got certified about 11 years ago by the Alliance of Mergers and Acquisitions Advisors, because I wanted to understand what the end game was like and then how can we maximize it. So what I do is I make people rich. I make people so wealthy they end up having tax challenges that I have to solve for them by finding the charities that they like better than the federal government.
That's okay. That's a good challenge to have. That's a good problem. It's probably the best problem and the end goal that all business owners want to have.
Yeah, well, and then what I do is I turn to them and say, but I want something for that. What I want you to do is I want you to help me leave the world a better place. So we're going to find you a charity, turn you into a philanthropist, and create you a foundation. And like now,
awesome.
like I'll give you an example. This one.
Yep.
This, you should have her on your podcast.
Okay.
This is her name's Teresa Carrington. She runs a charity called the Blessings Baskets. The charity is officially called 10 by 3, where she overpays illiterate women to weave baskets that she sells at Whole Foods. So the
Interesting business model.
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of a struggling business model because she overpays the illiterate woman. She pays 3 times free trade wages and turns the woman into the economic juggernaut of the family.
Okay.
Now, her artisans operate in 8 countries, 2 in Asia, the rest in Africa. And every one of these countries, not only is it legal to beat your wife, it's considered manly to do so. The women in these 8 countries are not allowed to open bank accounts in their own names unless they have a letter from someone in English requiring her to do so. What that does, that shifts the power dynamics in the family. Now the woman is the powerful one. Now she has the money that she can leave the dude, or he steps in line. So no more beating the wife. So
it's a good thing.
And well, the second thing the woman does with that money is she buys educational materials for her children. So this woman's charity is going to end illiteracy worldwide in the next 25 years.
It's phenomenal.
That's a causal factor in smallpox, malaria, polio, leprosy, and a half a dozen other scourges that plague humanity. Like, Jim, when I'm coaching her, I get choked up thinking about it because there are days when I'm coaching her, I don't feel worthy as a human being to coach her. Like, if she was on this call and we all died, she's going to heaven first. Like, maybe me and you, but like definitely her, right? Yet she's a converted television journalist, so she doesn't really know how to run a company all that well. You know what I mean? So she's really building it while she's flying it. But that's an example of people like I get them to be better business people. They make a fortune as a result of it and then help her leave the world a better place. That's the whole business model. What we do is just kind of recognize every company is unique, every business owner is unique, but the challenges are similar. There's 18 value drivers in a company, and what we want to do is create extreme valuation with it. So that's actually the title of my next book, of which I've got about a half a chapter to go before it hits the market.
Okay. So when should we expect that to hit the market?
I would say probably about 3 months because I can't spell, I can't type, and I have no idea what a semicolon is. So
I got lots of programs for that now.
I do, thankfully. But I hire people to do that. They edit it, they copy edit it, so it'll take them, somewhere around 3 months, and then it'll hit the market. The really cool thing about that is there's such a thing called the extreme valuation. So that's really what I do is I create extreme valuation of business models. And part of that is you have to understand the dynamics of deals. So there's a concept out there called the accretive benefit of acquisition. Are you familiar with it?
I am not.
Well, it's what I now renamed the secret stock market.
Okay.
So what happens is as a result...
I like that name better.
Thank you. So as a result of Sarbanes-Oxley, it eliminated people's ability to go public. So now bear in mind, I met the Wolf of Wall Street guys about in 1989.
Okay.
And I was too new to the marketplace, too new to the industry, too naive to know that these were bad dudes.
Right.
By the way, I can correct some historical inaccuracies of that movie. One, they were not on Wall Street. They were on Marcus Avenue in Lake Success, Long Island. Yep. And no one looked like Leonardo DiCaprio. They looked like the physical embodiment of pond scum. Did you ever leave a meeting and felt like you needed to take a shower?
Yes.
This place was more like a Lysol bath and a vitamin shot, right?
Okay. Yeah. After 20 years of developing and growing businesses myself, it's like you learn through trial and fire of who you get a good vibe from and who you don't. So I definitely can relate to that.
Yeah. So about 3/4 of the way through the meeting, I turned to them and I said, why am I here? And they said, oh, you're here because we can take companies public at 10 million in revenue. And I was like, all right, so you're looking for, at the time I was working for Merrill Lynch and we were the number one investment bank in the world. And so I said, all right, you're looking for Merrill Lynch's table scraps. And they said, I said, that's exactly what we're looking for. I said, we never ended up doing business with them because we knew like when I went back to Merrill Lynch, oh, you went to see those guys. So they, like their reputation was, preceded them. So, but the thing is that means like, let's say they were telling the truth. Like, most of the time they weren't, but the deal was like, let's say they were in this case. That means the threshold to go public in 1989 was 10 million in revenue. Today it's 600 million. That's not inflation. That's regulation. That's Sorbets. Okay. So the second story that's relevant to this is I was doing a series of presentations in Atlanta, and my assistant books me for she'll book me like a central Hilton property, and then we springboard off of it to do all the speaking gigs in that town, right? So I had 3 in there. So I'm sitting at the bar, and my wife and I have this running joke now. When I'm away, so she'll call me up and she'll go, "Don't talk to any pretty girls," right? Meanwhile, I'm like, you should travel more because there are none. It's like when you're traveling during the week for business, it is a sea of middle-aged dudes, right? Yep. And in that setting, the man sitting next to me overheard her say, "Don't talk to any pretty girls," started to laugh. And he looks around the room. He's like, hey, why don't you send her a video of us? She's safe as a kitten. Right. So it started up like this kind of single serving friend thing that happens when you're on the road. And the guy goes, "How long are you here for?" And I said, I'm here till Thursday. You're in a Hilton, you leave and get there on Monday, you leave in Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, right? Yeah. He said, "Oh, I'm here for a year." I looked at him, "A year in a Hilton?" I go, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, I'm taking this company public across the street." I said, "Whoa." I left Wall Street in 1996 to run my dad's company. So the deal is like, I never took a company public under the auspices of Sarbanes. And I said, "I hear it's a gigantic pain in the tush." I said, "So I don't want you to point strong. Don't tell me the name of the company. I want to ask you questions about this." He said, "Okay." I said, "You're private equity." He said, "Yep." I said, "You're not from here because obviously you're living in a Hilton." Yeah. He said, "Yeah, I'm from Dallas." So I said, "The company in question is doing more than 600 million in revenue." He said, "Yeah, 2.5 billion." I said, "They're probably scalable, some type of software." He said, "Software as a service." I said, "The reason why you're going public is because the equity owners right now are they're concerned that they got too much risk on the table and they're looking to pull some of that risk off the table." He said, "Absolutely." He just left a 4-hour meeting with the think tank just prior to meeting me. I said, "And they have no idea how difficult it's going to be Sarbanes compliant." And he said that he just left the meeting with the 4 hours. They all walked out of the room white as ghosts. I said, "How many accountants do they have in it now?" And he said, 12. I said, "How many accountants do you think they're going to require in order to get to Sarbanes compliance?" He said, 150. Oh my God. Right? And I sat back, I said, "Damn, how long is it going to take you to build?" And he interrupted me. He goes, "Oh, to build the accounting wing, it's going to take 18 months. I said, whoa. That's not an accounting wing. That's an accounting company. Yeah. You're going to build an accounting company in 18 months at what was then the tippy top of the stock market in 2018. Gotcha. That, my friend, is a moat. Moats create arbitrage. So what is the accretive benefit of acquisition? Let's say you were doing $100 million in revenue and you trade for a 1 times revenue multiplier. So you're worth $100 million. Yep. So in my case, let's say I'm doing $15 billion in rev and I'm publicly traded. I got $100 million sitting on my balance sheet. If I leave the $100 million on my balance sheet, it's worth $100 million. 1 times valuation multiplier. Yep. Do I get a valuation bump if I use it to acquire you? The answer is hell to the yeah. So, and it comes down to something that a lot of people aren't really that familiar with, and it's called investor expectations. So if you're going to buy a publicly traded stock and you're a reasonable person, you're looking for a single-digit rate of return. Like you're hoping it's going to be a high single-digit, but if you say double-digit, you're a lawsuit waiting to happen for some financial advisor. Right. But the reason why your expectation is like that is because they're big, they're liquid, and they're safe. So the idea is you, as a $100 million business owner, are not big, not liquid, not safe. So what ends up happening is the risk in the deal causes the valuation to go lower. It has a negative correlation between the two. Now what happens is what we really have to do is spend our time de-riskifying the business as much as possible. So what I want to do is I want to get CEOs to recognize a few things. Germane to this conversation is they have to recognize that investors pay the most for businesses, but they don't buy businesses, they buy investments. So what I do is I recognize the majority of private middle market CEOs are working 58.7 hours a week. That means their company is worth nothing. And this is probably the most important thing I have to share with you here today. More companies will change hands in the next 15 years than ever before in American history. It's a massive opportunity. Kind of for like people with, like you appear younger than me. Do you mind me asking your age?
44.
Yeah, you are. All right, so I got some bad news for you, but the deal is that you're 44. You're definitely younger than me. So I don't want you to take this the wrong way.
Fair enough.
There is a dearth of leadership in the United States because we essentially overparented our children. All right, so this is going to sound weird from left field, but it comes from the studies that I do on evolutionary theory to help us predict the future more accurately. We've got to understand who we really are. And so the situation is that adolescent mammals require unsupervised play to become adults. So what we have is two generations of people that were ridiculously over parented. I'll give you an example. In 1988, America's Most Wanted became the #1 show on television. And that changed parenting. It was really a misnomer, really a lie from word go. Sexual predators are everywhere, what have you. And now everything was like, people are starting to have kids a little later in life. You end up treating the kids differently. Like, I'll give you an example. How many kids were in your family when you were growing up, Jim?
I had 2, my brother and I.
Yeah, so I'm the 7th of 7. Yeah. So my opinion never mattered. I was basically like free workforce. So they were like, sit down, shut up, stop talking, do this, do that, you know. When I did get to television myself, I was psyched. You know what I mean? So it's a very different world. My parents' style of parenting is now considered legal neglect. My parents used to pay me $1 to babysit myself. So people laugh at that. I was psyched. Finally got television myself. I'm watching Wonder Woman, making bank. But I was 9 years old when they first started doing that. They'd be arrested today.
Yeah.
So,
my mom was a single mom working a lot, so I was very similar situation where raising myself. I was 7, 8 years old, kind of just, it was my brother who was 2 years older than I, and she had to go to court and fight my aunt who was trying to, do what you're talking about, is get her in trouble for leaving us home without supervision.
Crazy.
Yep.
So what happens is we had an overcorrection. It's typically what movements happen. They overcorrect, right? So it was complete overcorrection out of the resentment towards the greatest generation. I'm not sure how the baby boom generation knew better than the generation that stormed the beaches at Normandy.
Right.
But they did. At least they claimed it. So they completely overcorrected. So now we have 2 generations of people that cannot lead. So now what ends up happening is, that means this is a massive opportunity for people like you. So listen up. If you're younger than me, this is a massive opportunity. If you're older than me, it's a threat. Who the hell are you going to sell your company to? So you could literally make a company out of buying other companies now and fixing them. So the argument is that because of this, there's this massive opportunity and it's also a massive threat. So what I do is I make sure the CEO is not doing any defense. So what they're doing is like, I have them do a series of exercises where they identify what they absolutely hate to do, what they dislike to do, what they like to do and what they love to do, and why they get out of bed in the morning and what do they want to be when they grow up. What that does, it creates a delegation tool where now we delegate to people that love to do what we hate to do.
Right.
Freeing up our time. Now we don't not working in the business, we're working on it. Now it's actually worth something. Because are you familiar with Pareto distributions?
Yes, sir.
All right, so 80% of the private middle markets will not qualify for due diligence. The 20% that will, 80% of them are not investment grade. So what I'm slowly but surely doing is peeling the onion on what creates investment grade and then teaching that to my CEOs and infusing it into the business. Then what happens is now we can go on offense. And offense starts with organic growth. We check out the CRM, the ERP system, all of that good stuff. Making sure the sales force is pointing everything in the right direction. They're asking the right questions, populating the CRM, that type of thing. Then we move on to inorganic growth. So this is my piece of advice to your listeners. The first thing I would do is join trade associations and let it be known you're in acquisition mode. What you're looking for is motivated sellers. And motivated sellers look like this, because as we age, we don't get less cranky, we get more so. And then you're looking for the people who are complaining about the industry. So now what happens is you can acquire an asset purchase on that, roll it up with others, and then sell to the highest bidder. So what we have to do is we have to get on the radar screens of the big boys. How do we do that? That's the mission. We want to crack the code on what creates extreme valuation in every industry out there. And then what we do is infuse that into the new businesses we buy. Now what we're doing is buying low, selling high.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. There's a company I'm working with in Chicago right now. They're 70. They originally did not want to sell. Now they do. Husband and wife team. Husband is the head of sales. The wife is the financial mind. So based on the assessment of the company, they're doing $65 million in revenue. They're worth $12.8 million as we speak. But philosophically, they're wrong about their business. They think they're in logistics with a technology arm.
Okay.
We flipped that philosophy because when you do a rebranding, you start with a philosophical change. So we flipped that company, and now that company is a technology company that happens to be in logistics. So now we switched the pricing from project-based to subscription.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably a recurring model bump. That's why you swapped it.
Yep. So what happens is, like I got another one in South Florida. They fabricate closet spaces. Tiny company doing $6 million in revenue. They're worth $1.8 million right now. Fabrication businesses have the lowest valuation out there, right? Because they're considered the highest risk. So I listened to the guy. The guy called me up. He was calling BS on my presentation because I was recommending maintenance contracts. And he said, "Mark, who's going to buy a maintenance contract for a closet?" And he was very frustrated. He was 10 years in, he's done 6,000 closets, and he thought he'd be in every state. He thought he'd be multinational, and he's doing $6 million a year in revenue, and the thing's worth $1.8 million. It's just, his eyes are rolling all the time. So what I said to him was, he complained about his business for about 40 minutes. Have you ever listened to someone complain about their business for 40 minutes?
I have.
Yeah. I think I know the business you're in then. All right, so the deal is that it feels like a month. What he didn't know is I was writing down all of his complaints. So then at the end of it, I said, "I'm going to take you on as a coaching client." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because you're going to be my Babe Ruth." Okay. He said, "How?" I said, "Well, the first thing you're going to do is join your trade association and let it be known that you're in acquisition mode." He goes, "They're going to look at me like I'm crazy." I said, "Yeah, so act it." Right. So what you want to do is you want them thinking you're crazy, like they're going to eat your lunch, you're going to eat theirs. I said, "So what's going to happen is that you're looking for motivated sellers." He goes, "How do I identify the motivated sellers?"
Look for you.
I read back to him all of his complaints that I had written down. I said, "That's a motivated seller."
Yeah.
I said, "But you want to find a guy who sounds like that and is more gray hair than me." So now what you're doing is you start to accumulate other people's clientele. That parent company doesn't even have to turn a profit, because what you're going to do is part two of this is you're going to create a sister company, because there's something that you want when you build out a beautiful closet. Now, the best example I've ever heard of this is called the parable of the drill bit. You're in Lowe's, you're in Home Depot, you're looking for a drill bit. What do you really want?
A hole.
A hole. So when you're building out a beautiful closet space, what do you really want?
Place to hang my clothes.
Now you're thinking like a dude. So start thinking like your wife.
Dude.
But evolutionary theory dictates that our brains are not the same. Women do not buy clothes for the same reason dudes do.
I know.
Like this house I'm in right now, you can kind of see, I do like woodworking and I fix up houses, a little bit of a mental illness on my part, right? So I had to build a series of closets in this house. Because I think back when this thing was built, they might have taxed you based on how many closets you had, because this place had 2 closets. So I built 4.
Yeah.
And there's still not enough closet space. Now, how many of those closets do you think I use?
1.
Yes. So the deal is, and only for my the winter clothing, right?
Right.
So picture, now a good husband, I'm just going to build my wife another closet. So it's just to be a good husband. So if you start looking at it and saying, okay, well, what do people want from these beautiful closet spaces? They want organization. So what if you created a sister company of closet organizers? And you make it look like a franchise. Cartoon logo, each catchy name like Merry Maids. You can't use that one because it's already used. Ollie's Organizers, some such. You throw a little time, a little energy, a little money at it, and you figure out the price point. $50 a week. But here's the key. You do not charge by transaction. Charge by subscription. So now if we get that sister company up to the same $6 million in revenue, it doesn't trade for $1.8 million. It can trade for up to 5 times revenue, depending on how they set it up. That's $30 million. Well, that pays you to acquire all your competition. Pays you to build out an app where you offer closet organization, people who need that, by people who want to do that type of work in the gig economy. That's a $1 billion idea. From a company you cannot get maintenance contracts for. So what happens is I don't want to hear people's embedded logic. Oh, we never did that. Well, then you're never going to do it. So It's like, what are you building? So what I want to do is I want to figure out, what does the end investor want your business to look like? And then we manifest that.
That's fantastic.
It's like, it's going crazy good, Jim. It's crazy. Yeah. Like I'm on 28 airplanes a month. It's crazy.
I was going to say, if I had to ask what your biggest challenge was right now, it'd probably be with just bandwidth. If I had to take a stab at it.
It's getting there. It's like, I'm getting there, but it's not quite there yet. So, because what I'm finding is, like, the real challenges around all these things is can we improve the sales and marketing? That's the number one thing I see wrong in America. Number 2 is recurring revenue. Yep. So and then what I do is, in every other presentation I give, I trip over advisors, maybe like yourself. And then they're like, you and I are never going to know what it's like to be a 20-year-old girl. Never. Nope. No, we're never going to be that attractive, no matter how famous or rich we become.
That is true.
The deal is though, but I'm starting to figure it out because in every other meeting that I'm presenting in, I run into an advisor that is on me like white on rice. So what they're doing is they come to me and how can I help you? How can I help you? And I'm like, what that really means is how can I help you?
Right.
And that's probably referrals. Yep. So I have an army of guys. Like, you know when people say, I got a guy? Yep. I got a guy. Yep. I got so many guys that I'm not really even sure how we're going to build this whole thing out, but it's really wonderful. So it's been 17-year journey of digesting like what's wrong with American economy and then how to fix it. So it's really quite rewarding that way.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that story. I do have one follow-up question. On several occasions, you had mentioned the sales and marketing being the area that most companies have the most challenges in, or something like that. For the listeners that are watching this, if you were to give one or maybe two pieces of advice that if you're comfortable sharing that,
sure, of
what
course.
kind of area or expertise or opportunity on the sales marketing side should they be focusing on based off of your experience?
Okay, so the deal is it's usually a CRM audit. So now I've just expanded my coaching practice that I now coach private equity too. And so I have two companies, one in Atlanta, one in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And each one of them said to me, well, how can you help us? I said, well, I can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in needless due diligence. So they all kind of sat forward and they're like, what do you mean? Do you remember Freakonomics? Okay, so Freakonomics, there was a story in there about brown M&Ms and Van Halen. Now, what most people don't realize is how smart Van Halen really was. This is game theory smart. What they would do is they would bury poison pills into their contracts. Their contracts were really quite thick. And it would say there has to be M&Ms in the dressing room.
Green room, yeah.
Yeah, but then buried in it was there can be no brown M&Ms. So in fact, interestingly, this one private equity in Atlanta, run by this woman, she paid her way through college by being the backstage manager at a venue in San Diego. And she was in charge with taking the brown M&Ms out of the M&Ms for Van Halen. So that's a true story. So what it comes down to is we need some type of canary in the coal mine where we can tell, are we on the right path or not? So that's what the M&Ms were for Van Halen. They would go in, and if there was no M&Ms or the wrong M&Ms were in there, they knew to tear apart the entire setup because this place cuts corners.
Gotcha.
And if the pyrotechnics goes off wrong, it's not the promoter who's going to feel the hit, it's Van Halen.
Right.
So they would freak out, and they made it like they were drama queens. They trashed the dressing rooms if it wasn't done right. So the reputation got around really quick with all the promoters going, don't mess with Van Halen, dot every I, cross every T, and it was for the betterment of their audiences.
That's fantastic.
Fantastic, right? So picture, what I said to her was, I said, you should be doing a CRM audit. Like, just do the CRM audit. Now, so it increases their costs a little bit, and they're not that expensive. They're 10 grand. Right. So the deal is that you do a CRM audit first, then you know, is this worthy of doing a full-on due diligence? Because if they can't pass the CRM audit, they're not passing due diligence.
Right.
That's hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe a quarter, maybe a month that they'll be saving as a result of this. So what is a CRM audit? Now, part of this is I don't do that work. So I'm just going to tell you from the high level, and then what you can do is you can have my guy on who does that type of work. His name is Chris Williams. All right. So the deal is because I'm in Toronto at this point, and have you ever run into a business owner that's like borderline Asperger's and has like no bedside manner?
Yes, I've been accused of that at one point in my career. So I've taken some leadership stuff, like what you were talking about earlier, like learning how to lead. That was the last component that I had of running a business. But yes, to your point, as far as like an Asperger's, like, yeah, I've definitely dealt with those personalities before.
Yeah, so this guy in Toronto was like that. He goes, you never have to worry about a CRM ever again. And I was like, tell me more. He said, well, when AI is in our phones, it will automatically populate the CRM. And that's the thing. So I turned to my CRM guy. I go, is this a threat to your business model? He goes, no. I said, why not? He said, it's not the fact that we're just auditing, are they putting the information in? How do you know they're asking the right questions? That's the real audit. So what happens is if you can pass an audit that way, like I'll give you an example, Jim. 10 years ago, no one cared about your CRM. Right. Now it is the number one concern. I think personally it's going to be supplanted with recurring revenue. So I think that's the next big thing.
I can see both arguments, yeah.
In both cases, you still have to have the CRM set up right. And invariably, when we do the audits, we find something wrong on some level or other. Now, they're starting to kind of stitch together CRM with ERP. Not that I'm an expert in those things. Like mine was the last graduating class from my high school that didn't have to take typing, so I can't type, can't spell. I have no idea what a semicolon is or any other crap. And by the way, if you do, you annoy me.
I know enough to allow the Word docs editors to fix it for me, but I do know how to type.
Well, I'm so bad that when the word comes out correct the first time, I think the spell check isn't working, right? So that's how bad I am,
Fair
right?
enough.
Yeah, yeah. So the situation is that the what we want to do now, if I'm recommending to private equity to do CRM audits, I'm sure as hell going to recommend to everybody else they should be doing CRM audits too.
Yep, for sure.
So get out in front of it, just to make sure. And then like what ends up happening is we can take the sales and marketing to the next level. Invariably, that turns into like a coaching gig for him with sales forces and stuff like that. I don't get in the weeds on that. I just know enough to be big picture stuff. And then what I'm doing is consistently cracking the code on what's wrong, and then how can we fix it.
That's awesome.
In fact, let me tell you a quick story about the editing thing I was talking about.
Go for it.
My first book, I had 4 editors, 4 waves of editors on it. Each one of them were distance. They were like in other cities and stuff like that, except for the first one. So in the case of the second one, the second, third, fourth one all sent me emails saying, Mark, you can't say it that way. You got to say it a different way. And I typed back, whom cares? And I'm telling you, I was really proud of that joke. Not a one of them got it. It's like
I did.
if you grammar Nazis in your orbit, use that one. Whom cares?
Right. Whom cares?
Yeah, yeah. Like my brother and my sister-in-law are both English majors and professors and stuff like that. So I hit him with that one all the time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. But the situation is out there is you got a lot of really caring people in the private middle markets. So like let's call it like north of 3 million in revenue, south of $1 billion. A lot of people really care about their employees. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But they're doing a lot of things that they could be doing better.
Yep.
So what I'm there to do is to rattle their cages, and in some ways they're almost masochistic. Maybe you have to be to own a business because it's like
especially like the time and the fact that what you're getting at is, if I'm gonna expand on what you said, most lower middle market companies are built around the owner operator. The owner is very much hands on still day to day. Even if they don't want to be, they don't know how to let go or relinquish control.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that too. Like there's it's part of their identity or something like that. Like I was coaching a guy. You get a kick out of this one. I get a call from a business coach in Raleigh, and he says, Mark, can you coach my client? I'm like, that really means that's code word for can you fix my client?
Yes.
So I call the guy. Now the guy was doing nice things for me, so I said no problem. So I jump on a call the dude up, and I said, okay, tell me a story. And he said, well, he's got this laundry list of hatred for the private equity firm that bought him out.
I have seen that a lot. Like a lot of my friends who either work for a company or were the company and they were bought out by PE, they have struggled afterwards.
Well, we can get into that if we have enough time. The deal is that the in this guy's case, though, he said they even fired me from my own board. Now, I've counseled, no exaggeration, 27,000 CEOs in the last 11 years.
I believe that.
How many times do you think I've ever heard someone say I got fired from my own board?
I'm going to go with less than 6.
This is the guy.
Oh, wow. I was right. Technically.
Yeah, so I turned to the guy and I said, tell me a story. So he tells me a story, and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you what I heard. You tell me if this sounds right. Someone wrote you a check for $36 million, and you hate them for it. That's like being mad at the lottery because you won. Now, he didn't laugh. I don't know if you know this, but have you ever done therapy?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so me too. Doing what we do for a living, because it sounds to me like you're similar to me, it's sometimes like being a therapist. So It turns out the therapist knows you're actually getting healthy the second you start to laugh at your own stupidity. This guy wasn't laughing. Now, what I did, though, is it made me sit back and realize no one treated this guy like a human being. He was just a paycheck.
Dignity, the respect.
So I said, because no one asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? So, because if they did, he would have said the leader of this company and therefore should have never sold.
Right.
So now he's probably going to rectify it by, as soon as this non-compete's over, start building another one or buy it back from them when they screw it up and stuff like that. But what I'm arguing is you have to know what you want to be when you grow up before you ever even talk about selling. And you have to prepare the company at least 5 years in advance. And then be prepared. You don't want to fold your arms and sit back and go, I'm going to sell in 2 years. No. You make yourself as attractive as possible, the 20-year-old girl. And then you want to attract as many suitors as possible so you can cherry pick them. And this is really where I want the CEOs at. I want them like this. I don't know if I want to sell. Dazzle me. Yep. Just like the 20-year-old girl.
Yep.
So I think women get that reference a little bit better than dudes do because we're just not hardwired that way. But the argument is that if you're building something, What you want to do is start with the end in mind, figure out what is an extreme valuation exit, and then reverse engineer that to today. There's another thing too about it. It's like I find way too many business owners are so comfortable where they're at right now. They're throwing accidental psychological reins around their company and pulling it back to the level they're comfortable at. No. What we need to do is create an ethos of deliberate discomfort. Be willing to take each other out to the woodshed out of love. Slap each other around so that the other CEO will return the favor in spades. That's real accountability. That's basically
Real accountability is hard because most people don't want to have that.
No,
They want the idea of it.
the truth is I want to let you slime out on your goals because I want you to let me slime out on mine. So what we have to do is if we're really, really here to grow, then we have to grow as a human being and then our business grows. So, and that requires not hiding out. I call it an ethos of deliberate discomfort.
I like it.
Cool
That's
stuff.
really how growth it was always designed to be, in my opinion. Like having someone that I've gone through some stuff, just we all have, right? And it's like you finally realize that without tribulation, there is really no motivation to grow because we like the warm, safe comfort of normalcy, right?
Yeah.
Of everything's okay. I don't have to change anything. So forcing yourself into that discomfort, it forces that growth that will push you to the next level that you don't even realize is possible in most cases.
Yeah. So what business are you in, Jim?
So I am helping companies grow primarily by fixing their marketing and their sales.
Nice.
I've spent the last 16 years growing small to middle market businesses, mostly direct to consumer type stuff, but through the latest of technological and marketing standpoints, like from the push the buttons, know where to go, from a online funnel standpoint, paid advertising, digital advertising, organic, how that all works. That's really my wheelhouse. So I've done a lot in my own companies. I've sold one. I sold another one and then I had to buy it back from them. So I've had that personal experience. Learning the recurring revenue model is much better for evaluation through doing my own stuff versus pushing a lot of volume and doing millions of units in sales and then getting a 2 times EBITDA for your valuation. Like that's not worth the effort. I'd rather keep the cash flow. So learning that stuff the hard way, but like my background had nothing to do with sales and marketing. I just kind of fumbled into it and realized that that's how businesses float and how they are successful. So I got really good at that stuff.
Yeah. So, and the last thing we didn't talk about was monetizing intellectual property too. Like the company I was talking about before in Chicago, what they didn't realize was logistics is a precursor to the stock market. So if we can prove, now this is a big if, and frankly, she's on board. I don't know if the husband's on board. He comes across as he knows everything. So I might be reading tea leaves wrong on that one, but we'll see. If I'm successful in this, what we're looking at is they go from 12.8 million to 130 million just because of the subscription model you're talking about. But what they're missing is logistics is a precursor to the stock market. So if we can prove some type of predictivity in her data for the market or the economy, we could sell it to Wall Street for billions.
Yeah.
So it's like what I see is I see people not opening themselves up to how much they could actually grow. And frankly, the weird part I've had has been my experience that typically it's a sales or it's a marketing company. You know what I mean? And typically sales companies can't market and marketing companies can't sell. It's like, it's kind of a thing.
The departments still like to talk to each other. I've dealt with that too. I had a company that I was consulting with and they had a sales company or a sales division that was doing well. They had no marketing whatsoever.
Yeah.
So when I added the marketing end of it, we were able to add $40 million to top line in like 18 months, just from some basic stuff, just basic. I identified that education-based marketing for their particular niche was paramount to their success and proved that time and again for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really just depends on, you have to know your customer. You have to understand really what they want, or sometimes you have to understand what they need more than what they want. Because if people say, I want XYZ, that may or may not be what they actually need to be successful.
Well, it's a famous line from Henry Ford. If he asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Not a car.
Yep.
So sometimes it takes a little detective work around all that stuff, but it's really fun work. It's like there's a concept that I tripped over a little while back. It's super cool. I think your listeners should know it. It's that through commerce we're capable of what religion hopes to accomplish and what politicians fail at. So whenever I'm in front of CEO, I ask him to add up how many employees are represented by the leaders in the room. So, and there's a spirituality to commerce. So it's like if I want to sound like some cutting edge intellectual, all I'd have to do is assassinate the character of capitalism and commerce.
Right.
But what I'd actually be admitting is I'm a terrible historian and I'm statistically illiterate, because it's only the best way to run a country in the history of countries. So it's like we can do really, really good work together. But it's not like it's a thankless thing. You get thanked and you certainly make a lot of money from it. But there's more things hanging in the balance here. And frankly, when Ohio State did the study of the private middle markets back in 2011, they figured out that the private middle markets employ 1/3 of all the employees. And when the market was collapsing in 2008, 2009, big business was shedding employees at the hundreds of thousands range. The average middle market company hired 11 people each, which didn't correct it all, but it put a big dent in that people that used to work for publicly traded corporations that were getting shed left and right. Yep. So there's some really good work in all of this. And I have to tell you, now I must admit that the CEOs that I deal with are in the upper echelon, because they have to self-select, they have to qualify, and they have to self-select themselves into sitting in peer advisory meetings where you're not getting your butt kicked. People are telling you the truth. Very uncomfortable.
And it's something a lot of people at that stage in their professional career probably aren't used to hearing. It's like they're not used to hearing any criticism.
Dude, the second you started to hire people, they can't afford to tell you the truth anymore.
Yep.
Like, yes, your breath smells sometimes. And no, not all your jokes are funny. It's like your jokes get funnier when your signature's on the front of someone else's paycheck.
For sure.
Not the back. So what happens is that, but boy, do they respond to it when you know what you're talking about and can take them out to the woodshed and are not trying to kiss their butt. So like what I do is I piss people off. I'm very confrontational, very controversial. And then what happens is like, it's how do they handle that? Right. The person who invited me in, pays me to come in and speak, to rattle their cages, is so appreciative of it because they really can't. And the reason why that is because when you're paying to be a member of something like this, they can laud their membership over the leader of the group. So this way the leader can only push them so far. So what I encourage them to do is to take each other out to the woodshed. Because you sound to me like you're a good BS detector. My guess is if you knew what was wrong with my company and I took you out to the woodshed and slapped you around out of love, like, in other words, take metaphorical ownership of your business. Sure. That if I make it really uncomfortable for you, you're going to look to repay that favor in spades when it's my turn.
Absolutely, because that's what good friends do.
Not let me off the hook. I'm not even so sure it's friends. I think there's some other term that we have to come up with it, because friends.
Well, the Bible calls it. They reference that iron sharpens iron, right? So
yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah. I didn't know that you were religious. There's a cool exercise I just tripped over. Are you open to it?
Sure, absolutely.
This was from another podcast that I see, because I watch podcasts all the time. A religious man said he became religious. Now, this is going to sound crazy because I'm an atheist, right? Okay. But I'm not one of those that I beat up people because they believe differently than me, what have you. In fact, all of last year, I went back to church for an entire year. I read the Bible. It's up there, all 1,400 pages. I did not have the epiphany I was hoping to have, but I did come across a really cool exercise. And it was a religious man said, someone challenged him, well, what if you treated everybody that you run into for the next week and a half, what if you treated them like they were Jesus Christ in disguise? And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So I sat back, and I know a little bit more about cognitive science than this guy does. Habit isn't built in a week and a half. It's built in a month and a half.
Right.
So I've been doing that since June of last year. Okay. And it makes my life better.
Right.
Like, I'm nicer, I'm a little more patient, a little more easily to forgive, seeking forgiveness, stuff like that. I'm not nasty to people around me, and I'm a native New Yorker. So,
which is hard. It's doubly hard. Yeah. Totally. My mom's from Buffalo, so
yeah.
We come by that honestly.
Yeah. So the deal is that exercise really kind of helped me. So those two things that I was talking about before: one, recognizing that commerce is not what it's being painted out to be, and then the other is like, what if I treat people better? Is my life better? And it turns out it is. There's like the collateral effect is my life is better. It's cool.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
It's really neat. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
No sweat. So but I appreciate it. This is a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for taking the time carving out. I know you're really, really busy, so I really appreciate it. If our listeners wanted to get in contact with you and see if they qualified for your services or just wanted to get to know more about you, how can they go about doing that?
Well, my website is nexteconomy.com. nxteconomy.com, or they can just look me up. I have 3 books available on Amazon right now, and my 4th one I'm just finishing. It'll be out in probably a month or 2, and that's the one that's all on extreme valuation.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I greatly appreciate getting to know you, getting to know your story. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you so much.
No sweat.